Hello everyone, I am Veos and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing the Interplanetary SSTO, the one that I used to transport the rover that was in a box to DUNA. Now, Interplanetary SSTOs are not a new thing. They've been around for a very long time, even at the beginning of KSP. Way before Mark Thrim, Matt Lone, or even Marcus House, there was me and like 3 or 4 others that were working on SSTO technologies. I make it sound all super corporation cool. But yes, SSTO designs and techniques, and at the time we were getting a lot of our inspiration from 2 people. One of course being Mr. Scott Manley, the man, the myth, the absolute legend of KSP. But there was also someone called V4 Virus who actually found out about the air hogging techniques and started building interplanetary SSTOs that way. You have to remember, this was a version of KSP that didn't have a lot of the parts that you see in your game now, including the rapier. And I think Mark III parts weren't even really a thing yet. So a lot of people were building their own cargo bays and their own cargo doors and everything using wings. Robotic parts, joints, none of that was a thing. So we built our own. Now, V4 Virus unfortunately left YouTube because of some stuff that was going down in YouTube all those years ago. But some of the forefathers of KSP YouTube gaming channels are like, I could never pronounce his name right, but Mark's X33. I mean, this guy was making SR-71 Blackbirds before anyone really else was even trying to do something like this. At the time, even with sheer amount of lack of parts, this kind of creativity was absolutely gorgeous. Back then, if we wanted to build a cargo bay or joints or anything, we had to get extremely creative. We would use fuel lines as types of like rubber bands mixed together with landing gears to create kind of like bendy joints and cargo bay doors. This was another of one of Marx's 333 creations. Absolutely gorgeous. Another forefather of the interplanetary SSTO was Mr. Overfloater. Sad to say, a lot of these YouTubers are no longer uploading videos. Real life can be a real pain in the ass sometimes, and a lot of times you don't have any time to do what you love doing. I feel very lucky and blessed that I'm still creating content for everyone, especially when I go back and look at all my old friends and see that they're no longer active on YouTube. Makes me feel a little old. Back in my day, one of his interplanetary SSTOs, this was before Mark III parts. So like I said, a lot of what we did was build cargo bays using nothing but wings. We didn't have the Rapier engine, so a lot of our interplanetary SSTOs was just basically the ramjet engine and some nuclear propulsion. Some of our designs were air hogging, sure, definitely. But other times we were like, we could probably do it without. This was just one of his many different SSTO designs back in the day. I just wanted to show everybody this because these were the originals. These 4 or 5 channels, including myself, were some of the original creators of SSTOs. I know that makes me sound like an old fart, but it's the truth. Sometimes cargo bays were a little overrated though. My technique was to make kind of a hole in the middle of the SSTO and then place whatever part that I wanted to bring up into orbit inside that cavity. You have to remember that things like drag and whatnot was poorly calculated back in the day of KSP, to the point where you could actually put a nose cone on a rocket and get less efficiency than if you had no nose cone at all and just a blunt flat surface, because the way KSP calculated it, it really wasn't based on drag as much as it was weight. So adding a nose cone to the rocket really actually hindered its effectiveness. They fixed it since then, but that's the kind of game mechanics that we were dealing with back in the day. It's funny how each of us had different types of designs. My design was very much of a biplane-esque kind of design because I like to have everything with inside the wings, and I really love the flying wing aspect of the design. Later on, my SSTOs would change to more of a vertical rocket-like approach. I will have to say though that some of my favorite designs was the one that I was working on to go to Lathe. So it was a water-based SSTO with pontoons and everything. The pontoons were made out of the air intakes, or at least what they looked like back in the day. One of the cool designs about this particular old craft was that it was a VTOL, could land on water, and it could land on the ground. So it was kind of like an all-terrain SSTO. But anyway, I'm getting off track here. I'm sure most of you knew that interplanetary SSTOs was an old science, but over the years and different versions of the game, it's been reimagined and rebuilt many times over, especially with all the new parts that they've given us and the new upgrades to the game engine, as well as the physics and drag and all that kind of good stuff. stuff. So here she is. She doesn't yet have a name. I'm not entirely sure how much she can actually carry to another planet, but I do know that when I had both of these in here, by the time I got to orbit, I had about 3,000 Delta V left over to play with. So first of all, we'll test it out with a typical 36-ton orange tank and see where we go from there. Val Crenell? Am I saying that right? I'm sorry if I'm murdering it. Welcome to the fold, Space Cult. Prepare the liquid fuel sacrifice. Okay, well there she is. She just proved that she can bring 36 tons of cargo to DUNA. Emphasis on the to DUNA, because we're definitely not landing. So needless to say, this 36-ton cargo would have to like refuel a station in orbit. I am kind of curious to see how much Delta V we would have if we were to let go of this very heavy cargo. So let's go ahead and do that for testing purposes. And we've doubled the amount of meters per second, but that's not going to help us get back to Kerbal anytime soon. Alright, so it can deliver 36 tons to DUNA, just not landed on DUNA. It'd have to deliver in orbit, and then of course receive some kind of liquid fuel in order to burn back to Kerbal. So not a whole lot. It's not the perfect SSTO just yet, but it's a start. Alright, there we go. I give it some lights. Very nice, very nice. Now for some maneuverability. That doesn't really change the mass much. Nah, that's barely noticeable. We're good. We're fine. Okay, that covers all our axes. Axes. Blah. Me talk good. Got the American flag on it. America. Now I will be working on a design that does have a ramp system. The only reason why I didn't implement one for this Interplanetary SSTO is because of the simple fact that I wanted to try to keep that center of mass in the same spot the entire time. So when it's full of fuel, it's right there. When it's almost completely empty, it's right there. Any cargo that I was to put on this thing would make sure that it's right there the entire time and not make that sucker move. So unfortunately, putting a ramp right here not only killed my Delta V because of the fuel that I no longer had, but it also made the center of mass move up, as this heavy part right here was no longer available because this nose and this tail are the same weight. So that would cause me to have to move a whole bunch of stuff to try to get right again. So some of the things that I could actually do with this SSTO is actually maybe start building a space station around DUNA. Would be kind of cool. I could then begin filling it up with fuel, and then once that was all done, we could start building a base or something. But anyway, okay, so since I kind of built this behind the scenes in order for you to sort of follow along in its construction and be able to make your own if you so desired, I'm going to do some reverse engineering. So we have the tail. obviously. This piece, the BS, the big S wing, has no fuel in it, although I guess you could put some in there. Aerodynamic nose cone, C7 brand adapter, slanted, MK3, 2.5 meters, adapter slanted. And over here, if you notice, I started building the craft up to the nose. We have the wings full of fuel. There's 3 of them, and they're all slanted in a dihedral design. There's 2 more in here. These 2 are kind of squished into each other just a little bit. All right. So the wings are their own entity, and they're attached to the Mark III cargo bay. That way the weight of the engines and the fuel isn't on top of them. We have your interplanetary drive or NERV engines on a TVR 200L stack by adapter. Then we have the C7 brand adapter, complete with little nose cone, aerodynamic nose cone. Here is a rapier, but it's not just any rapier. It's our nice little design where we put the aerodynamic nose cone on the back, and then of course move it in order to almost eliminate drag. We have the quad adapter on the front, shock cone and air intake, C7 brand adapter, Rockomax X200 32 fuel tank, and during launch, if you're going to do a full 36-ton go at it, you're going to want as much oxidizer as possible. But for lighter loads, you can go ahead and bring that down a little bit. You want all the oxidizer to be literally burned out of the tanks before you get into orbit. That way you don't have to worry about lugging them around as extra weight. The large landing gears are attached directly to the cargo bay so that all the weight is directly on the wheels. And of course you have the cargo bay. On the inside we have our little technique of re-entry control where the probe core is pointed downwards, so that if I was to control from here, the nose of the craft would point up if I was to click on prograde. And then of course we have our regular probe core facing the angle of attack for normal flight. And then basically just Mark III adapter, C7 brand adapter, and our core part is the aerodynamic nose cone. And that's it. That's pretty much the reverse breakdown. Good luck and happy SSTOing. Is that even a thing? I want to thank everyone for coming, and thank you so much for being a part of this channel. Love you all. Have a safe day, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye for now. Bye-bye.